Welcome to episode 24 on the journey to conscious healthcare. This is episode number 16 of series 1, the do's and don'ts of support coordination. The journey to conscious healthcare looks at the healthcare industry, disability sector, and how to best navigate these areas to get the best for you and your life. This series is called the do's and don'ts of support coordination, where we take a look inside of what it's like to be an NDIS support coordinator and help them to better navigate this ever-changing NDIS system. I'm your host, Trevor Keen, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Conscious Healthcare SA, an expert company that is known for high-quality healthcare services and transforming the healthcare industry in the disability space. Today's show is sponsored by Conscious Healthcare SA. Conscious Healthcare SA is employing. Yes, that is right. We're living our core value of we create ripples and sculpting more dream roles for practitioners. If you're sick and tired of being treated like a number and lacking the fulfillment in work and also the environment to have to jump out of bed in the morning, then please do get in touch. Further details about this are going to be provided in the show notes. Today's episode is quite a special one where we do have 3 support coordinators joining us. And what I'd like to do, rather than me doing the introduction, I'm going to hand it straight over to Jo. So Jo, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Trevor. I'm Jo, and I'm a specialist support coordinator at Here to Home. So we're a group of about 24 coordinators now, both level 2 and level 3. I've been in this particular role for about 18 months, a bit over that, and I love this job. I love walking the road with people who are navigating the NDIS world and their disabilities and meeting other people like you. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Not a worry. Thanks, Jo. And just quickly, I've got a question for you to start with, which is, what did you want to do when you were growing up?
So I remember saying embarrassingly that I wanted to help people. So I refined that a little bit, but probably that's been my inspiration from a very early age, is just wanting to be in people's lives and walking the journey.
Oh, it's lovely. Warm heart and nature. I think that's very common across support coordinators, if I don't mind saying. And we might jump through to Emma next. So that's the bottom left on my screen here. Emma, would you like to do a quick introduction, please?
Of course. My name is Emma. I'm a support coordinator with the Benevolent Society, and I look after Northern Adelaide and York Peninsula and a little bit of Broken Hill at the moment.
Perfect. And Emma, you would like to tell us a little bit about where you're from and what it was like growing up, I hear.
Yeah, I grew up in Townsville in far north Queensland. And I feel like I'm probably the last generation to have lived a pretty normal childhood of, being a little bit loose and not much supervision. There was always a really nice sense of community where I grew up. Everybody, everyone knew their neighbours and that kind of thing. And most weekends were spent, we're mad fishermen and fisherwomen in my family and campers. I just had a pretty cruisy, fun childhood doing normal stuff. And I don't think we got a Nintendo until I was quite old. So, basic, just wholesome, fun. I do miss that sort of simple lifestyle when I think about home.
Oh, I love it. Dying question I must ask you as a secondary here. Does that mean that you were bored at some stage in your childhood? You managed to learn the ability to be bored?
You didn't dare say in my family that you were bored, because then you were given some horrid job from mum. So if you even looked bored, she'd be on you. So we were pretty quick in creating a lot of mess. There was never an opportunity to be bored. So, which I think is amazing skill to acquire when you're a kid, because you just never know what boredom is. You're always busy and inquisitive.
Oh, lovely. I think that's how naturally children are, I reckon. Just very playful and curious, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And Kidist, they do say best for last. Off to you. I'd love to hear about you.
Well, my name is Kidist. I'm a social worker as well as a specialist support coordinator at Plant Pilot. I've been in my role for about 12 months now, and prior to that, I've worked in mental health and housing and homelessness. Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Not a worry. And the question that I've got here for you is a billboard. You've got a gigantic billboard. What does it say?
It would say, keep on keeping on.
I like that. I like that.
I think
Absolutely.
it's about never quitting, because no matter, if you stumble, you get back up. No matter what happened yesterday, that no longer matters. Today's another day. Keep on moving on. Yeah.
I love that. That reminds me a whole lot of the Resilience Project. Hugh, I can't remember how to say his name, but fundamentally it's just really about, continuing to step forward, whatever that looks like. You're not always, having your best day, but you can still put your pants on as such and do whatever you need to, whether that's a conversation or getting out to work, whatever that looks like. So what we might start with, though, because we've got the round table, which is really exciting. We've got three very experienced people in front of me here. What we might start with is support coordination. What is it? For those that don't know, we've got many support coordinators listening. So everyone's going to have their own version of the truth. And there is no one version, right? Because it's colourful. So, Jo, what's a support coordinator? Tell me.
So in basic terms, it's helping people coordinate their NDIS supports. It feels a bit like you're the centre of it all. So trying to link people with things that fit for them, because there's a lot of different services out there. So finding the right fit for the person that you're working with, whether it be NDIS supports and sometimes then branching into the mainstream.
Absolutely. And Kidist, you're lighting up. Do you want to give it a crack? What's your version of the truth?
Yeah, I think it's, I would see it as service coordination or navigating through plan to support participants to best utilize and make the best out of their plan. That's how I would see, or how I would define support coordination.
Perfect. Emma, you've got the wheels, you're driving.
That's scary. You're very brave. All of the above, and also building their capacity. I think we're under capacity building. And I think it's really important that we're taking them along the journey and building their capacity and understanding their NDIS plan and what it can do for them and what it can't do for them as well. Some, sort of think that NDIS will pay for everything, and that's not the case. So, for me, it's a lot about educating the participant around what they can and can't do, and where to get those supports if the NDIS won't provide as well.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's somewhat famous.
Love him.
Somewhat famous. And he's got this thing about, having more people get out of bed, loving the thing that they do as opposed to hating it, because 87% of people actually dislike their work, which is pretty frightening. So what is it that gives you joy in your jobs as a support coordinator? Jo, do you want to kick off?
I think that the relationships are the thing that keeps me going. So not only relationships with the other providers, that's lovely too, but, I think the relationships with the people that we're working with, they're so rich. You're privileged, I think we're privileged to sit with them in some pretty vulnerable times sometimes and trusted with that. And I think that just opens the door for some really beautiful conversations and relationships with people. That's what keeps me going.
Absolutely. We might go over to Kidist.
I think what keeps me going is knowing that I'm making a difference in someone's life in one way or another. Navigating through their plan, getting their services organised and things like that. And also especially with specialist support coordination, it's a lot more complex. So, which means there'll be hurdles that come, and getting through those with clients is what keeps me going. Then achieving those goals.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I love navigating the complexity of it and making a simplicity of it, and also getting breakthroughs is what I'm sort of hearing there. Emma.
For me, I think I'm probably more of an adrenaline junkie than I would like to admit. I think there's never a dull moment. So every day when I open my emails and check my phone messages, there's always something.
It's empty, isn't it? Isn't it empty? No emails.
I wish. No, it's a mess. But yeah, there's never a dull moment, and I think that's important for me. I need to be stimulated in my job because you spend so much time there. So, and you're always learning something new every day. You think you've got it down pat, and then you discover something completely new. And I love that. I love learning from other people. I'm never, too ego driven to not learn from someone else. I don't claim to know everything. So yeah, they're the key points to my job.
Yeah, and I think also like to add to that is you also learn so much about yourself. Like, for
Very
me,
much so.
I've learned to be a lot more patient. Like, yeah, that was very thing that has improved so much.
Fantastic.
And,
Well, whilst we speak of learning about ourselves, I suppose one really good way of learning about yourself is through having some challenges and some adversities in your life. So what are some challenges and adversities that you might well face as a support coordinator? Is there any of those out there?
No, none, Trevor.
Oh, lovely. You've solved it. Can I please have your book? Have you got a book?
No, there's one or two challenges out there, aren't there?
Oh, I'll only take one or two. But what have you got for us, Jo?
I think one of the biggest things for me is the uniqueness of everybody's situation, trying to fit that within a system. And I don't know an answer for it, but it certainly poses a challenge. And the different departments that do different things. So different government departments I'm talking about. So it might not fit within disability. You've got disability, health, education, housing, finance. And sometimes it just feels like people are slipping through. So, yeah, being able to connect them with the right service in the right time frame, I find that quite a challenge.
Oh, that's quite fascinating. I'm actually going to have Bill Shorten, the NDIS minister, I'm going to be interviewing shortly, which is going to be quite fascinating. So I dare say he's going to have a whole lot to say on that topic there. But whilst we're still on this, what challenges do we have? Emma, have you got any?
I think for me, a lot has been that what my baseline of a good life and appropriate care is a lot different to other people's. And sometimes their baseline is lower than mine, and taking away an expectation. So, I think as support coordinators, we can be pretty gung-ho about giving them this amazing life and doing this and empowering them. And that's actually not what they want. They just want to live a quiet, simple life and access the things when they need to access them, and that makes them really content. So for me, it's recognizing that, my views are kind of irrelevant, and this is really about the person and what makes them happy and content and safe in life. Yeah,
that's fascinating. That reminds me a whole lot of, it's really hard to read the label from inside the bottle.
Yeah.
So you're really getting to know the person and individualizing it. So not this carbon copy sort of independent assessments or whatever that might well look like. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Fascinating. And Kidist?
For me, the challenges, there is many challenges that come with support coordination, on a daily basis almost. But I guess one of the biggest challenges I've had in my role would be with one client that was homeless, and I managed to get her housing after 4 months of trying really, really hard. And she probably lived in there for about a couple of months before she just decided to move out and give it up. And we're back to square one. Went through so much to get that housing. And these things happen, and sometimes you just have to accept it and start again with them.
Yeah, it's really challenging, isn't it? I think Minister Nat Cook's very on the topic of housing. I've also got a key housing contact I'm going to be interviewing shortly, because housing supply is quite a challenging and also getting in. So I can totally appreciate and understand the challenge that you face there. What we might go into is blurry vision. So we've got to get OPSM to come to the party here. So what I mean by that is, how can we go from blurred vision to gaining clarity as a support coordinator? What I mean by that is, are you case managers? Are you, linking up with services? How does this all work? What's the challenge that you face there? Who would like to jump in first? I'll open it up.
I think I'll jump in and have a bit of a go, because I feel a little bit blurry still. Maybe I need a trip to OPSM.
All right.
I think you are in the middle of it, and which makes it hard, because there's a sense of wanting to make it all better in the most efficient way possible. But there are real limits to the role as well. So I think remembering what they are is, and just checking in with that, is this the support coordination role? Having that checklist in your head, I think, keeps you on track, because otherwise, if you're led always with your heart, it gets a bit blurry.
What about those that are a bit new and they might not know and have that checklist? What does that look like? You've clearly got some form of a checklist yourself, and I'm happy for you to come back to me in a couple of minutes. But it's really, I think, important to know what that checklist is. I know Aaron Byrne from the NDIS, or NDIA, he represents the NDIS. He spoke about having some black and white and having a bit more clarity about this. But this sort of role is still a bit blurry, I think. And I've been doing this podcast for plenty of time now, right? So have you got that, or do you want to come back to us?
Come back to me, Trevor.
Not to worry. Emma, I'm going to put you in the driver's seat again. You like scary things, you're telling me?
Well, not scary. It's a little bit adrenaline raising. You can get on a roller coaster. It's an acquired thing. I think the blurriness gets blurrier, and it's been left up to the individuals to define what our roles are, and then that just creates a bigger mess, particularly within teams when everyone's doing completely different processes. I know the checklist in my head straight up is it disability related? If they come to me with something, is it related to their disability? Is that disability on their NDIS plan? Because we've all got participants who have several disabilities, but only one of them might actually be noted on their plan. So is it disability related? Yep. Is it the one that I'm supposed to be supporting? If yes, well, is it a goal? If it's a goal, then who is working on that goal with them? Handball it to them. If not, get someone in place who can. And then the other way, if it's not disability related, this is where the boundaries come in that are really, really tough, because, we're just helpers and we're lovers. But it is about pushing back and saying, look, that's not within the scope of my role, but I can refer you over here, because we all know services that provide services. So we can always refer on. And that's within the scope of our role, is to refer on. So that's my little checklist. I think for a new support coordinator coming on, I remember those days very fondly. It's a wild ride. And only talking to one of my teammates this morning about it, she said it took her a good 12 months to really fit in and sit in the role comfortably and feel confident. And I can see Joe nodding. So, and I'm sure Kidist is nodding as well. It's strap yourself in. It's quite emotional and full on. It's busy. It's go.
No, I totally get that.
I think, just sorry to jump in there, I think you've nailed it there with and that's what I actually wrote down, the link to disability. So I think that is a really important question to keep you on track. Does this link to the disability? And therefore that's where I sit. But I really love what you're saying, because I think it's so true that it's not where it ends. You know, we're wanting to not leave people hanging if it's not our role. So finding the person, and that can take a bit of digging sometimes, to find the department or the agency or the person that is going to pick that thing up that's not our role and run with it.
Absolutely. And do they have capacity is the other part, you know. We're all really aware of just the lack of capacity across so many providers. You know, there's a high demand. So,
yeah. No, I feel like we're talking about mental health there very quickly, but we'll skip on. Don't you worry. We'll cover topics. Kidist.
I would say there is, I guess it depends on like what has been mentioned already. Is it disability related is a very important question. And a lot of the times even it's referring them on, like having a developmental educator come on board, or depending on whatever the problem is. But if it's with service providers, sometimes they might not quite get your role or like be able to put strict like boundaries. It might even mean they might flick them off the support coordination roles off the NDIS website. So I've had to do that a couple of times. The ones that come at you very strong. So be like, these are my roles, here you go, have a read. But also in terms of working with participants, could mean the ones that are capable, just empowering them to take on some of those responsibilities themselves and see if encouraging them to make decisions for themselves. That would help rather than them pushing everything on you. Of course, you do your role and everything that's within your scope, but things that are not within the support coordination scope, empowering them to take it on themselves if they can.
Absolutely. And I suppose on that note, if we happen to have that all going very well, and we've got clarity and all that sort of stuff, clarity of purpose, and knowing what our role is, that will then hopefully save us some time. So my next question is, how do you save time? How can we get more for less? What I mean by that is in what you do. Do you do your case notes on your Apple Watch and have it dictated? Or how do you streamline different things, whether that be appointments, all different things like that? Because it is a bit of a challenge. I keep hearing time and time again about all the non-billable hours. So there's a whole lot of things about KPIs and all that sort of fun stuff. But how do you fundamentally get more done with less time? Any tips or tricks?
I think being super organised, I think you have to be. So I have a running to-do list that gets updated. But I think writing case notes as you go, if you can. Sometimes that's really hard, particularly if you're in a really in-depth conversation with people. It's not a time to be taking down notes, but where I can, I just jot down case notes as I go.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks,
same.
Jo.
I do the same as Jo. Yeah, I think case noting as I go, because we can deal with 10 clients per day, on different levels of interaction. And I know for my brain, once the new information's come in, the old information's pushed out. So I have to be pretty diligent about getting stuff in immediately. And I allocate time every Thursday where I don't look at my phone, and Thursday mornings I spend doing catch-up. So if there's reports that need to be finalised, if there's all like emails that need to be responded to, I do that on Thursdays, because then it gives them till Friday to respond. It's really, for me, doing it on a Friday when everyone's tying up loose ends just seems to create more work on a Monday, if that makes sense. So I give it that Thursday morning. That's my time to just disconnect, focus on the things that I haven't achieved from the list. Like I have a list like Jo, which is never ending, and go from there. And I try to be really diligent about that, because you can miss some really important case notes, particularly if the client is complex and you've got DHS or DCP involved. You really need to make sure you're capturing the information.
Absolutely. And Kidist?
I think for me, it's really important to have like really good time management because it's easy to fall back otherwise really quickly. And similar to what's already been said, I like to go into work early mornings and use the first couple of hours to go through like reports and things like that need my attention early in the morning and go through as the day comes by. But case noting as you go is very important, and like putting boundaries. Some clients tend to call you every day. That sort of wastes your time, their funding, and etc. So trying to bring it back to what is it that they actually need to send a text message rather than call you every day. So that helps reduce the amount of time, and also it makes it easier for case noting because you can email it to yourself from your phone. That's what I tend to do.
Oh, perfect.
I think,
Jo, jump in.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say as well, email to me was probably one of my biggest challenges to learn, and learned that when I started the role about chunking's the wrong word, but clumping together
or time blocking.
Different. Time blocking, great word. Yeah. So because in previous roles, I would just lose so much time, I guess, going through in order the emails. So I really try and get focused on one client at a time and immerse myself in that person. So you're checking the emails that are relevant for that person. So it took a bit to get used to that different way, but that's been a really helpful one.
Oh, that's perfect. It reminds me, I will put in the show notes as well. There's a podcast called How I Work, and there's lots of productivity hacks that go in there. I think it's Amanda Imber or Amber Imber. I forget off the top of my head. But I'm quite curious, what do you spend the most time on? Is it emails? Is it trying to book appointments in? Is it searching the web? What do you spend the most time on? Because ultimately, if we're trying to get more effective and efficient at it, we probably better work out what's the objective. What are we trying to get better at? Is it being better at email? Is it communication, expectation management? I don't know, because if you don't manage expectations, I promise you that takes a lot longer if you don't manage it at the front end. So where do you spend most of your time? And I'm curious as to whether there'll be a different split. So I'd like to know individually where you spend most of your time.
Yes, for me, I spend most of my time on email because every morning, especially because I work 3 days a week. So those 2 days that I'm not on, I'll come back with I come back to the office with very long emails. So that makes it quite difficult and challenging. And of course, you have to go through it and address each and every matter. But I think for me, how I sort of manage my time in terms of getting ahead of my emails is, having either blocking out an hour or an hour and a half earlier on before midday, just addressing those and not answering phone calls or anything like that, and then return those goals and etc. after I'm done with those, because otherwise it gets hard and another couple of days will go by before you address those emails.
I'll totally get that. So emails, what I heard is the primary time there. Who would like to jump next?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, Kidist. I think email is such a great thing in so many ways, but it is such a they just grow, don't they, in your inbox? So, and I think it depends. As I'm sure the others would find, there are times where you might be going through a particular situation for someone, and so there's lots of phone calls and long, in-depth phone calls, perhaps, or the need for appointments or various things like that, which can certainly be very time-consuming. But I think overall, emails are definitely the thing to manage.
Yeah, emails. Perfect. Emma?
Yeah, I'd say emails, and I'm a big fan of a collaborative meeting. I think those initial meetings with everyone, all the providers, just so everyone's aware of who's involved. I don't think there needs to be any secrets. Like, of course, there's privacy, but I think if each provider knows who's involved, there's no grey area. There's just working collaboratively, and it creates a better environment for the participant, and they feel really supported. So I do a lot of those collaborative meetings, which, they're big case notes, and then that gives me a clear indication of gaps as well that need to be filled and coordinated. That and emails. I was saying to Joe as well earlier, there's not, for me, having regional areas, that initial setup can be quite difficult because the face-to-face isn't always possible, and just with the changes and the funding limitations, you don't want to waste your precious 24 hours with, a bunch of travel when you could do it virtually. So, learning to coordinate virtually is definitely something that, we're working on.
Well, I'm kind of curious then, if we dive in a little bit deep, a bit further than I was going to, but I think this is useful just given that it sounds like emails are a sticking point. I know for me, I send an email and I've got one of two folders. I've got an email where I then put it in and tag it as awaiting reply. So then I've just got one box that I need to go to and I know that I'm awaiting reply. And secondly, what I might do is if it's something I need to make a decision on, I then put it in there as Trev awaiting reply. I need to do something about it. Is there a strategy that you then employ? Because that puts it into one of two boxes. I send it off. Sometimes I might even schedule send it, right? So I might send an email deliberately tomorrow morning, so then I get a response later, depending upon when I need the response by, because the sooner you send it, the sooner you get your response, right? So there's a whole bunch of different strategies I employ, and I also use Calendly. So fundamentally, if anyone's booked in a meeting with me, in fact, probably for this podcast, you end up clicking on that, and then that got me to have you booked in. So that saves a lot of time scheduling. Is there certain strategies that you then use to be more effective and efficient? If we're going to spend so much time on there, how do we do that better?
I think you'd all be disgusted with my inbox. It is an absolute mess, but in my mind, it works perfectly fine. I reply as soon as it comes through. It's done and it's case noted. Like I'll do everything related to that because I'll just jump ahead and do 10 other things and that gets lost. So I know for me, it's straight away, the decision's made, off it goes. That's how I would work. And I very differently to you, Trevor.
That's right.
Very
so you're
methodical.
sitting in your inbox all day, and then you just reply to it as they're going, or is it sort of time blocking? Because I'll still set time blocks to then go and respond to the awaiting replies and that, but I'll do it at set times. So I'll literally check it twice a day.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, 2 hours a week.
Really? That's it?
Yeah, but that's through a lot of training of other different people. And I appreciate it's different in the different roles, right? You got to realize that I've got other staff members that can do different activities. So I'm kind of curious as to how do support coordinators make this work for each other? Because it's going to be different, right? You obviously have people coming at you more regularly. So then the forms of communication, whether that's text or phone call. For me, for example, if you want to get in touch, you either text me or you give me a call. You don't reach me via email. I'm not very responsive on that. And I deliberately make sure that I let people know that I'm not that way, so then they understand how to communicate with me. But that's taken a long time. I had an autoresponder that I had on my email saying, hey, I'm trialing something new, but that might not well be appropriate in support coordination land, I dare say. Because if you said to people, hey, I'm not going to respond to you for however long, it's probably a bit disrespectful, right? It's a bit different in different spaces. What about you then, Joe? Is there a certain way that you go about it?
So actually really different. I'm just so curious on yours, Emma. I'm completely the opposite, actually. I panic if my inbox is too long. So, the little scroll bar, when that starts to shrink and it means that the list of my inbox is longer, I start to get palpitations. But when I've responded to something, I put the in the email in a folder that is related to the client, or I've got folders that are, for housing or different bits of it, because we get so much information that comes through or about providers, personal things or to do with the company. So I've got different folders. So once it's dealt with, then I push it aside. So I know that anything sitting in my inbox still has to be dealt with. So that's my strategy there.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
Curious on yours, Trevor. Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that. It sounds very streamlined.
Lots of refining. Kidist?
Well, for me, I do something similar to Joe. I move them into folders, but what I also like to do is label the folders. That makes it easier, or like categorize my email so that whether it's urgent, flag it, or if it's respond letter, I use a different color of flag. And of course, we get endless emails all day, so deleting what's not relevant helps get all the unnecessary stuff out of the way. And one thing also that I learned probably a few months ago is you can actually create like an automated, like a rule, so that when you get an email that has like from a certain person, it goes into a folder, or it will flag it if it's from a certain email. So that's it has helped with some of like clients that I've had long term, that I have like emails from OPAs and things like that. Yeah.
That sounds all very along the same line of time blocking. I think if you can end up doing tasks like that, that's very useful. Is that then tie into your project management software as well? Do you use a project software management software, or is it pen and paper? Because I'm very curious. That I hear on forums all the time support coordinators are talking about this one or that one. So how do people manage? Is it project management software, or is it simple pen and paper?
We use a project management software. It's called CareView. So what also, takes a bit of time is when you get an email, you have to copy and paste it into, or drag and drop it into the project management software, which is for us CareView, which is also what we use for case notes. And that's extra time as well. So there's no edited way of doing it. It would have helped. It would have made, the whole world easier if there was just one system. But no, that's not the reality.
Multiples. Emma, what about you? Project management software, or is that what sort of way do you keep it all? How do you keep track of all these reminders? Diary.
I have a notebook, which again would disgust all of you because it's just chaos on paper. But then we also have TBS have their own system for documenting, which is pretty straightforward. But yeah, I'm a little bit old school. It's a diary or nothing. It's
whatever works for you. I think that's perfect. I think it's important to know. We talked earlier about self-awareness, right? You're aware enough that works for you. Some people don't want to do it the other way, which is fine.
And sometimes, even when I'm on the phone or a call, I'm always jotting down key points to then finish the case note in the computer. So, that's probably the most streamlined process that I've come up with that works for me. And if you were to watch me, it looks messy.
So quick one, do you then note it down, take a photo and upload it, or have you got to write it twice?
No, technically I write it twice. So there'll be a few notes, and then because I'm also really aware that when a client's talking to you on the phone, and it's usually a pretty heavy chat, they can hear you typing, and that can then tell them that you're disinterested when really I don't want to say, I'm actually writing about you, because then they're like, hang on a minute, what do you mean you're writing about me? So, I am more about writing it on paper first, because, I don't want them thinking that I'm not interested or that I'm recording, the wrong information, or, just my experiences of participants who've heard the keys going and going, hang on, what are you doing? So, for me, it's the paper.
That's a good, perfect. And Joe?
Yeah, we use CareView as well at Here Home. So that's the drag and drop with the emails as well as the record. So the system that I fell into is only dragging sent emails. So because when, there can be that thread of an email chain, and you've landed, say, 4 other emails, but the final sent, when you go, excellent, finish it off, encapsulates all of the previous ones. So it's just, I don't know, I just found that quite an effective thing to do, and just brief case notes in there. And I'm a bit like you, Emma. I do keep a diary as well, so de-identified initials relevant for who I'm working on, but I just have a weekly plan, and then I just move everything that didn't get done in that week across to the week.
Yeah, that's
I need a little bit of pen and paper.
Very fascinating. I think we've learnt quite a lot there. We've got a couple other questions to jump into. Now we're going to squeeze. We've warmed you all up here. So boundaries. How do you set them? This magical word, boundaries. Who would like to go first? I mean, work. I mean, life. I mean, is there work and life? How does this work?
I'm probably going to jump in there because it's one of my favourite things to talk about. I think if you don't have boundaries in your own life, you'll never have them in your work life. And that's probably really controversial for some. I think we really have to be accountable for our own staff. I was going to use another word, but it would have got written off. We have to be accountable and responsible. And I think, self-care and what that looks like is totally up to us as individuals. But when we're good, everyone else is good. So the boundaries start with us, and they become easier to implement in a work scenario. And clarifying the scope of the role with your management is another great way to relieve that responsibility, because we all feel this sense of responsibility that we're supposed to be doing more, giving more, finding more for our clients. But when you have a supportive management team that go, no, that's not your role, you can push back on that. Having that support is just, it's really liberating, actually. Because I feel as support coordinators, we hold a lot of risk, we hold a lot of information, a lot of decisions are put onto us that we just cannot be making. So boundaries are really, really important to protect ourselves, emotionally, but also from a legal point of view as well. Yeah.
And what about yourself there, Kidist?
I think boundaries, it's a hard one. It's a hard one, as I think, especially for women, we're natural like nurturers, and, we'd like to take care and do more, but you can't really do that in the professional world. It doesn't really allow, especially in support coordination. And I think what's important, or what I've found over time is important, is having communicating effectively to the participant and their families and significant others or service providers is very important. Setting boundaries and also setting that expectation early and being consistent is very important. Setting boundaries, and I guess if you're being in control and saying no, and sometimes you just have to do it and not feel guilty, which is hard. But if you set the expectations early and keep it consistently, that would help, I'd say, resolve the issue of, the blurred lines where the boundaries get pushed. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me quite a bit. Brene Brown is quite big in regards to, I think everyone knows her. I don't probably have to mention her again, but she's fantastic about pretty much having the courage to step up. And also did a post recently on LinkedIn about, I think it was Amanda Imber again, in regards to how to say no. And sometimes no doesn't look like saying no. It might just be as simple as, oh, thanks, Joe. I'm going to check my calendar and I'll get back to you, just so you know what you're saying yes to. Because how often do you say yes and then have a guilt sort of trip that you go through with something that you don't want to? So it's very, very good insights there. I think, Joe, you've got a couple of little shares there as well.
Yeah, and really what Emma and Kidist have said too. But yeah, I think transparency is really important. So, saying what you can do and then sticking to it. I think I'm my own worst enemy with boundaries. My clients are, very respectful actually of my time and of those boundaries. So it's really when I let the lines blur that everything tends to start. So I think it's about, for me, learning and then slipping up and then relearning, or reaffirming, and carrying on that way. But yeah, definitely being clear. I think that really helps and takes away some of the guilt when you do have to say, I can't do it at this time, because if you've already said that's not, that's not possible, then yeah, that's helpful.
No, it reminds me actually of some of the emails I see come back from support coordinators that they have their working days. And I find that's quite a good boundary to have in their footer. So then it's just like, I don't respond on these times and days. That's just one little thing, but clearly a very big topic there. Rightio, I think we've got another very interesting question coming up here. Who's inspired you? Who's your biggest inspiration and inspired you on your journey? Who would like to go first?
Well, I'll jump in. I've got two people actually. I realise. So my mum actually is my first person. She had a disability actually, but she was quite an inspirational person to me. But my manager as well. So Shan at Here to Home, just the way that she inspires the rest of us in the team. I take a lot of energy from her and learning. So there you are.
That's fabulous. Emma.
I'll keep my job now.
For me, it's from a work perspective, my team, like I do find they're an amazing group of women, and we're really supportive of each other from a work and a personal perspective. We actually had a wellbeing day last week, and some of that was identifying, what it looks like individually when we need help. And so it was really interesting to hear what everybody's, some say, I get quite quiet and reserved. So we know that then we have to look out for that and that kind of thing. And it was actually Janet who said, when Emma's had enough, because, the swear words go flying and it's pretty obvious. And I was like, Janet gets me. Yeah. I was like, Janet hears me. She knows when I've had enough, and she gets it. And now she's let the rest of the team know. So, it was different for everyone, but they're just a really amazing bunch. And I've never worked with a team like that. Before I got into disability, I worked alone. So, I don't mean that to sound really sad, but it wasn't. It was great, but they're just a beautiful bunch of people and incredibly supportive, and they're just really nice, and it's a privilege to know them. So I hope they hear this and know that they're very loved at my end.
Certainly in a couple of weeks' time, I'll have the privilege. Kidist, over to you.
For me, it's two of my clients from my previous job that had physical disability as well as mental illness that got me quite interested in the disability sector and in NDIS. I didn't know a whole lot about it back then, and working with them or doing case management for them pushed me to research more about the NDIS and look into what kind of roles I could do as social worker within the disability sector, and that's what pushed me to get into even support coordination, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Rightio, it is that time of day. Let's pretend it's 20 years into the future and we've achieved success in the disability sector. Thank you, Bill Shorten. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Paint me a picture. Who would like to go first?
I think more choice. So I know choice is a big word already out there, but I feel like there could be a lot more. So, for example, how to use your plan. So, maybe instead of buckets of funding, there's one bucket, and people can choose where that goes. So that's a start, anyway.
Choice, love it. That's all good.
I think that's a great start. because they say choice and control, but, in the fine print within the limitations. So, which, it's a...
Please watch the terms and conditions.
Yeah, exactly. I think, as a big fan of a collaborative meeting, I would love to see more providers in, state providers working more collaboratively with NDIS, because there's such this line in the sand. You've got an NDIS plan, not our problem, that's an NDIS problem. So I think, 10 years, 20 years, even next year would be really nice, Bill Shorten, is to see that availability for us to push back on more local government and state services to support the NDIS scheme.
I know there's a no wrong door policy. It's everyone's problem. It doesn't matter politically where it sits, right?
Yeah.
It's all of our problem to make sure that everyone gets looked after.
Absolutely, in theory, but we just aren't seeing that as often as we'd like.
Yeah. Staying on a positive note, Kidist, what's your future? Guys? What's your future look like?
Mine is a bit similar as well. Having one bucket of funding, yes, will make a big difference, but also making it easy and to access, to talk to the NDIS planner. Like, it's frustration. It's like so much frustration when you make phone calls and things like that. Having people that you can actually go to rather than a call center that don't know what they're talking about. So I think make a really big difference to, it could be small agencies, whatever they can do to make it work, but like someone you can actually go to and you can speak to, that participants can speak to, will be a lot more better than, going through call centers and making it really very hard for support coordinators, hard for participants. And also, I think I'd say for new participants that want to join the NDIS, rather than, you have to fit in this box, assessing them and seeing them, okay, what are the issues and how can we make this work for you, rather than you have to fit this box. Is that hard? And there's people that don't end up on the NDIS where they have an actual limitation because they didn't fit in this box that they're supposed to fit in. Yeah.
No, I totally get that. They might not know how to do the paperwork as well as someone that might be from a more educated area, whatever else that looks like.
Yeah.
But on that positive note, we will... Oh, Emma, I'll let you have one last word.
Oh, of course. I think I'd love to see planners, work more collaboratively with the support coordinators as well. I feel like they don't believe us sometimes that, we're on the ground, we're seeing what's happening, and I want to see them, I guess, respect our positions a little bit more. We're not feeding them the wrong information. We're providing them with exactly what's happening. So, I don't understand why we just can't work better together. That's the bottom line that I would love to see.
Absolutely. Well, perfect. Oh, Joe, we got two last ones. Here we go.
No, I can't let Emma have
we
the
can't run
last word.
away. Oh, my days. Look, it must be so riveting to listen in. Here we go, Joe.
No, I just wanted to say in 20 years, I would love, and sooner than that, I'd love to see a shift in the way that we look at capacity building, because it's become a bit of a buzzword to me, I feel. And we so often, though, have to actually highlight what people are really finding challenging and, draw a spotlight onto people's challenges in order to get them support. And I feel like it's sort of backwards, it's not strengths-based, it's not building people up in that way. So I'd love a different way of really helping people work towards their goals, but not in a way where it feels like we're going to jeopardise your funding and the whole support that's helping you get there. So, yeah, food for thought. I'm not sure how to get there, but it'd be great if we could.
We'll keep plugging away. Oh, thank you so much. We've been talking to Joe from the newly rebranded Here to Home, Kidist also from Plan Pilot, Emma from the Benevolent Society. We might start with you, Joe. Where can we find out about more it is that you do?
So our website, is that what you mean, Trevor?
Yeah, absolutely. How can we get in touch?
Yeah, so we've got a website. You're right, newly branded. It's heretohome.com.au. All the numbers are there, and contact us anytime.
Perfect. We'll make sure we all add that into the show notes. Emma, over to you next.
That's a really good question, which I wouldn't even know how to answer. You would ring the Benevolent Society. There's a 1300 number, but they will allocate you to me, unless you want me to give you my mobile number right here, right now.
No, it's okay.
We'll
We'll put the link. We'll put the link through on the show
Benevolent
notes.
Society referrals, you will be able to find us through there.
Perfect. And Kidist?
For me, it will be planpilot.com.au. There is a bit about profile or an intro about me, or you can get in contact via LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you on next episode.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes.